Alright, here we have pickerel weed. Those long big leaves here, those can be used to wrap fish in, cook some fish in on a fire on a bed of coals. The younger leaves that aren't furled out yet, those can be eaten when they're tender. When the flower goes away, you'll get a little green fruit with a seed in it, and that can be eaten right on hand. It's a nice trailside nibble if you have a little water by you. It grows in the water, as you can see. So if you ever see pickerel weed, just remember those tips. And be sure when you're down here grabbing your pickerel weed that you keep your eye open for things like this. Let's see if I can get in there. That's a little gator that decided to visit me. So just be aware that if you're going to be by the water, there possibly could be gators around. Alright, right here we have Caesar weed. Now this can be used to dry this stem out here. You can dry this out, use it as a hand drill, or eat the leaves. It's really a famine food. It's not that good. If you ever see some, just take your tongue and touch it to the back of this, and you'll find out why. It's got a funny texture to it. The young blossoms can be eaten, and what we're going to do is use this to make a hand drill. I'm going to dry it out. Caesar weed. This is a quite abundant, useful plant down here, the saw palmetto. There's a difference between these and cabbage palms, and I'll show you a cabbage palm so you know the difference. Now, the biggest distinction is right here. Okay, you see those teeth right there? That indicates you have a saw palmetto. Now, cabbage palms can grow low to the ground like this and confuse you, but they're much bigger. They do not have saw teeth on these. And another big distinction to make sure you got the right one. They're both useful and edible, by the way, so it really doesn't matter, but it's good to know the differences. If you see this frond here, it stops right there. Okay, that's a saw palmetto. Now, once I show you the cabbage palm, you'll see that it extends up in here more, and that's another way to distinguish it. See, this one, same thing. It stops right there. Okay, now, these can be used to make cordage, these leaves. The fronds can be used to make grates and cooking and fishing poles. I don't really use saw palmetto for that. I use cabbage palm. It's not as good, it's sharp, it's not as big, but if it's all you have, it's here. Now you can also pull down on the base and pull out. If you pull down on this and pull out, it's quite hard. You should wear gloves. If you don't have calloused hands, definitely wear gloves because you will cut yourself. But if you can pull that out, there's a little, at the base of this, there's a little section about yay big, an inch or so, of a tender white carbohydrate bite, which you can see you've got a lot of them out here. Okay, so if you need something to eat, this is a good spot to stop, right here. Now also you can see you've got some tinder. This is usually dry. Okay, so if you don't have tinder, right here, saw palmetto. Now these also grow a black berry on them. This looks like a younger one, doesn't have any berries on it, but they grow about that big, right there. Okay, they're kind of large. They're very nasty, like cheese and tobacco, moldy cheese and tobacco juice, as I've heard the best way to describe it. They aren't the greatest, but if you just nibble them piece by piece, you can get them down, and they actually have some health benefits. Now here is a smaller cabbage palm. Now remember on the saw palmetto, I showed you how that center frond stops at the base. See how this one kind of continues up? That means you have a cabbage palm. And a native one will actually bend like this one. That means you have a native cabbage palm. Now, these fronds, as you can see, do not have saw teeth. These are the ones that are useful. You can make almost anything out of these. Fishing pole, baskets, grate to cook on, shelter, you know, the list goes on. Now same thing, you can get some dried tinder up in there. And these are dangerous in a way because this is where a lot of the snakes like to hang out, and possibly a scorpion or two down in that nice area down there. So don't go sticking your hands around in there without checking and being careful, because you don't want to have that happen to you. If you're in a survival situation, you don't want to make it worse. So it's good to look at all dangers and things when it comes to foraging or looking for food or building shelter. You got to know these things. And cabbage palm also offers these nice leaves to make cordage out of. It's not a very strong cordage. You can split these and make nice strong cordage. The center, again, the center can be pulled out and you're going to get what's called heart of palm. It's really good. You get a lot more on this. You can't pull the base, like the saw palmetto, you can't pull this out, but the center one you can. The bigger, the harder. You can also take, and I'm going to show you another cabbage palm that's bigger. I wanted to show you the small one so you can see how similar it looks to the saw palmetto, which is right there. So, alright, here's your larger cabbage palm. These right here, this is what you can burn a hot, quick fire to cook with. They work fine, they're safe. It burns just a white smoke, but they burn hot and they burn quick. And then you also got your tinder up in there that you can use right here. Just pull all that out and you got plenty of it. Like I said, remember, this is where critters like to hang out. You can find wiki grubs in here to eat. I believe you find them in the saw palmettos, wiki grubs. And up here is our seeds I wanted to show you. Okay. Grab this. Okay, there we go. See, these ones are not ready. They're green, not ready. When they're black and shiny and not brown and withered, they're ready. They're going to be really hard, and you can just grind the whole thing up in a metal coffee grinder. Do not use your plastic one because you will break it. But if you have a metal grinder, you can grind these up into some flour and make some bread, which I'm gonna attempt to make this mixed with acorns and a few other seeds to make a nice bread. Just see how it turns out. And that's the last look at the cabbage palm. If you're ever in saw palmetto or pine scrub, you've obviously got plenty of vitamin C. A lot of people know that you can make tea out of the needles, steep it for 10 minutes, and you got yourself a good cup of vitamin C with a very citrusy taste. Now these are all yellow pine down here. You know, you got loblolly, you've got longleaf, pond pine. There's a few different kinds down here. There's a lot of uses. Not so much the cambium layer like up north. You have white pine, you can eat the cambium layer. Roots can be chewed or used as cordage. Just chew them and suck the juices to get a little bit of nutrients. But they're really good for cordage, which is what I use them for if I need it. The sap is very useful. I'll make a separate video on different uses of the pine pitch. You can make glue, cement, gum, so many uses. The young green pine cones, those can be used to eat, or you can roast them and have the little seedlings drop out and you can eat those or make a flour. The pine is quite useful, and you got all this matting down here you can collect for shelter, for bedding, and whatnot. This stuff I've tried is tinder. It's not that good. It'll help you a little bit, you know, to put on top of flame, but it's not going to really catch a spark unless you really break it down. It could maybe get an ember, but it's not going to be all flamed up. But if you find a dried piece called fatwood, it's full of resin and it will burn very good as, say, kindling. Okay, here's a smaller pine that I'm going to use to show you what needles you want. Now you got all these real long ones growing all over. You really don't want those. Now if you look right in the center here, off the very end of the branch, you're going to have new growth coming out. See, these are a lot smaller. Let me get one out here. Okay, they just pull right out. Those are the ones you want. Let me show you the difference in length. Okay, see how them old ones are darker green? This one here is shorter and a little bit lighter. Those are the ones you want to make tea. Okay, these older ones are going to be quite tart, a lot of turpentine flavor in them. So if you're ever making tea, that's what you want. And yes, all the pines here are fine to make tea with. Don't ever use a yew or anything with flat needles, but pines and spruces are good to make tea with. Spanish moss is quite common out here. You'll see it hanging in the trees. One way to tell you have it is by how that just broke off. There's no stretchy band on the inside, which a stretchy band would indicate you have usnea. There is a difference, so make sure you research that. But on the end here, there's little, if you scrape that off, you've got little green tips on there. Now the little green tips can be used to eat. It's not the greatest fill of food, but you can use it. The best thing for this is to use it for bedding, cushion if you're going to have to build a shelter. It's recommended that you smoke this first though, because chiggers supposedly like to hang out in here. So I would recommend smoking it, getting rid of all the ticks and chiggers. You don't want to be sleeping with them. And you can also use it to put on cuts or wounds like a band-aid. Works pretty good for that. And that would be Spanish moss. If you want to catch some shade, you can always find a nice live oak tree. Now let's take a look up here. Now the live oak is in the white oak family, and it does have acorns. All oaks produce acorns, and it is a very overlooked food. This was a staple food for a long time. Now the leaves on this oak tree aren't going to be like the ones you find up north. These are going to be more rounded. Okay, I know it's hard to see. I don't know if I can get up in there. You can kind of see how them leaves. See that leaf there at the bottom sticking out? How it's kind of a rounded tooth shape. That's what you're looking for. Okay, here's the bark. Now, since it's a white oak, the leaching process isn't as bad. It's not going to be as bitter as your red or your black oaks. But this is the common oak you're going to find. There's also Chapman oak and Laurel oak. You can also use it to cook food. I use it as smoking some jerky or fish because it kind of smolders. It's a hard, very, very hard wood. They used to use it to build ships. It was the common wood to build wooden ships because it was such a strong and plentiful wood. You can see that it's all over back here. And that is the live oak.